Space tourism, the modern space race. Billionaires of the world took an important step for the future of space tourism, an industry that not long ago could have seemed like the creation of a science fiction writers. An unnecessary play by astronauts for some, a success in the vanguard of humanity for others, the two suborbital journeys of Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos herald the beginning of an uncertain but fascinating stage in humanity's relationship with outer space. Unlike the pride felt by people in the space achievements of their countries, the space race of billionaires has not escaped controversy. The positions towards the success of the two and towards the future plans, where Elon Musk is preparing to enter the space tourism industry ambitiously, can be summarized by the way in which those who formulate them imagine their place in history. For some, July 2021 may remain in the annals as the month in which humanity began to walk confidently back into space, led by visionary personalities. In the future, we could celebrate the two flights as a founding moment, how the descent of the American Pilgrim Fathers from the ship Mayflower, the fall of the Bastille, or how the Romans celebrated the founding of the Eternal City. In other words, we may have lived, without knowing it, the historical reality of a founding myth. For others, there is no room for any romantic narrative about the two space launches, just billionaires who have seen a place where they can make a profit and invest, space tourism being an industry like any other, whose contribution to humanity will remain to be found out. For a third category of people, the place of Branson and Bezos' successes is rather in a calendar of infamy. For them, July 2021 will remain hidden somewhere in the basement of history textbooks as another month in which the pandemic of the early 21st century tormented the Earth, and a few billionaires of the day flew to the edge of space, fulfilling their childhood dreams in the age of inequality and climate change. Whatever the correct vision, space tourism has just become a reality, and the growing race for the young space travel market requires a clarification of the stakes, challenges and problems raised by this industry. The billionaire space race. The first was the launch of Virgin Galactic's Unity 22 rocket, owned by British billionaire Richard Branson. On July 11th, Unity 22 was launched from Las Cruces, New Mexico, with 2 pilots and 4 other passengers on board, and climbed to an altitude of 86 kilometers before returning to Earth. The whole story lasted 36 minutes, a suborbital flight, the incomparable view of the Earth's curvature in the distance and the company's first successful product in space tourism. In 2014, efforts in Virgin Galactic's first attempt to develop a rocket for such trips ended with the death of a pilot in an accident that appeared to kill commercial space travel just before it really began. July 11th launch was also the result of a game of pride among billionaires, with Branson scheduling it as soon as possible to overtake Jeff Bezos. The founder of Amazon had to wait until July 20th, when the New Shepard rocket of the Blue Origin company was launched from Texas with 4 passengers on board. 9 days late, however, Bezos can boast that his rocket flew to an altitude of 107 kilometers, in a race that lasted 10 minutes and 18 seconds. Bezos' statements on his return to Earth were received with the eyes of those who see space tourism as a harmful spectacle of opulence. Employer of a company with frequent problems when it comes to employee rights and a dubious history of taxes paid, Bezos thanked every Amazon employee and every Amazon customer for paying for this road. Branson and Bezos are not the only billionaires with their eyes on the stars. Elon Musk is also in the running, even though he may seem a little behind when it comes to ticking off some milestones in the history of space tourism. Musk's projects make up for their ambition. SpaceX, the company he owns, boasts that it has already sent astronauts and various payloads to the International Space Station, and will send a crew exclusively of civilians into orbit in September. In 2023, SpaceX is planning a race that will take Japanese billionaire Yusaku Maezawa around the moon aboard the Starship rocket. Prices. At the height of the missions, Virgin Galactic is currently the most advanced company with a business plan when it comes to space tourism. According to several information provided by Branson, the company already has hundreds of reservations, and the price of a ticket is around $250,000. In 2022, Virgin Galactic plans to begin a regular space travel program to honor its reservations, and long-term plans are aimed at gradually lowering the price to $40,000. Blue Origin is much more reserved about prices. Reuters wrote in 2018 that the price planned by Bezos' company will not fall below $200,000 for a flight anywhere. The only place put up for sale for July 20th adventure was won in a $28 million auction by a person who wished to remain anonymous. Despite the money paid, the person did not participate in the first flight of Blue Origin, and will enjoy the tourist services purchased in the future. The first client of Bezos' company was an 18-year-old man, whose father had offered the second sum in the initial auction, the record for the youngest person to arrive in space. What impact does space tourism have on the environment beyond the controversy over how appropriate a space tourism industry is? Accelerating the space race in this area raises another issue: the potential impact of emissions from rocket launches on the environment. The answer is a complex one, and much of the potential negative depth impact lies in the scale of this industry in the future. Hydrogen engines produce water vapor, not pollute. Solid fuel engines, indeed, are composed of chemicals that can pollute, but we must compare how many rockets are launched per year in outer space and, for example, how many wagon trucks come from other countries in Romania. Which pollutes the most? As long as we are talking about 3 people who have space tourism projects, it cannot be a mature industry. If there were 50 people launching tourists into space, there would probably start to be rules and standards, including for pollution. It's time to tax the billionaires beyond the optimistic economic forecasts for the growth of the space tourism industry in the coming decades. The entrepreneurs at the helm of the 3 companies that started fighting for customers in the young market have to answer a series of key questions before they can deliver the often skeptical promise that the future of the industry is one in which the costs will be low enough for the industry to be a mass one. First of all, given that July marked the first flights, it is unclear whether the missiles currently in use can even cope with regular commercial flights that will allow a stable pace of travel. The 60-year astronomical pride of the great powers. There is a certain irony in the history of humanity's space travel. The moments when humans literally break for a shorter or longer period of time on Earth are defined mainly by the political and economic context of the planet from which they separate. When Yuri Gagarin succeeded, on April 12, 1961, in being the first man to reach Earth's orbit, the space race was between the pride and the desire for prestige of the 2 great powers of the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union. Today, 60 years after that, pride has shifted to the private sphere, and the collapse of the Soviet Union is a key moment in understanding this transformation. The cosmos, the playground, space tourism, the modern space race. The competition between the United States and the Soviet Union to reach new milestones in space exploration is the story of almost unlimited budgets dedicated to space programs, historical successes and decades in which success or failure in space were reasons for national pride or shame. For hundreds of millions of people. The coordinates of the space war during the Cold War are generally well known. First, it was the stage of the Soviet Union's initial success. The first was the fear born in the West after the Soviets managed to launch the Sputnik 1 satellite in 1957. The United States believed it was much better at space exploration technology than a space explorer. They actually did. The Gagarin moment followed, and then the success of the Soviet lunar program, the first time a mission sent from Earth reached the Moon. The second stage is the spectacular return of the United States to the race. On July 16, 1969, any Soviet success will be overshadowed forever by Neil Armstrong, whose small step on the Moon was a huge leap for humanity and a full symbolic shot for Moscow. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, the coordinates of state space policies changed radically. Suddenly, outer space was no longer just another Cold War front, and the pressure of ambitious plans dropped considerably in intensity. The emphasis on relations between states when it came to space shifted from fierce competition in the 1960s and 1970s to ever closer cooperation. The process culminated in the late 1990s, with the launch of the International Space Station and, since 2000, its permanent occupation by astronauts from various states. The almost unlimited budgets of the states in the United States, the budget for space missions jumped from a tiny one in 1948 to more than $100 million in 1957, peaking in 1967, when the budget of all the agencies involved in the spaceflight reached $7 billion. Adjusted for inflation, the budget will never be equaled again and will contribute significantly to the total amount of approximately $30 billion that the U.S. government will spend in the space race from the launch of the Sputnik satellite in 1957 to Armstrong's step on the Moon. When it comes to the Soviet Union's budget for the space program, the estimated amounts are generally lower than those allocated by the U.S. government. For example, strictly for the program that aimed to put a man on the Moon, Moscow would have invested between $4.8 and $10.1 billion, significantly less than U.S. investments. Pioneers of space tourism: the modern space race. The first space tourist was Dennis Tito, an American engineer and businessman, who paid about $20 million to spend 6 days on the International Space Station in the spring of 2001. Prices were hovering in an area with an even rarer air than the prices set by Branson and Bezos reach. Between $20 and $30 million was paid by each of the 7 pioneers of space tourism. More details at tripbyte.com.